The outsourced conscience. In a society where morals fail, a multitude of governmental laws abound in an attempt to bring order out of chaos. A perpetual increase of legislation is the evidence of moral decay of a society. As the conscience of individuals within a society dies, there is an attempt by the powers that be to create an external conscience to establish order. That conscience must be enforced by the power of the state to be viable. There would be no reason to invent an external conscience if humanity lived according to the internal conscience. There would be no reason to make laws if men were inherently righteous. Humanity would obey the conscience within. In the book of Genesis, physical man is created from the ground. God then breathes in the breath of life, and man becomes a living soul. The two creations exist together as one being. The outward man of the flesh is likened to the beasts that perish. It is a temporal body housing a spiritual being. The inward man is the soul of man, which has a consciousness of God and is eternal. When the beast of man rules, humans become animal. When men govern themselves from within according to the eternal laws placed in their hearts by God, chaos is brought into order. Contrarily, the unconscionable must establish order by drafting laws and forcing others to submit to them under the threat of punishment. A developed conscience is within the individual everywhere he goes. It is the judge of every thought, word, and deed. It is preemptive in cutting off wrongdoing before it occurs. Actions do not change based on external forces or whether others are watching or not. There is an awareness in the soul that God is always present. A moral conscience works as a spiritual law enforcement officer inside the heart, apprehending and arresting preconceived notions and thoughts before they become words or deeds. It is accepted that there is no escaping the consequences of misdeeds. We see the absence of this in society today. On the other hand, the physical creature rebels against the soul within. Fleshly desires constantly war against the conscience. It is a fight unto the death. One of them must die. The Apostle Paul understood the conflict between the flesh and the spirit and wrote, "The flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that you would." Paul declared a delight for the law of God in the inward man, but acknowledged a conflict with the earthly desires of the flesh. However, having attained salvation, he proclaimed victory, writing, "O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then with the mind I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh the law of sin." The raging war of desires of the flesh against the conscience is why society is being torn into pieces today. Godlessness has increased prolifically in the world. Casting off the laws of God, the wicked frame mischief by creating laws of their own. They are tormented by the laws of God. Thus they persecute and seek to destroy the righteous, for the preaching of the cross is offensive to them. Many, having suppressed their own conscience until it was dead, now determine to replace their dead conscience by creating a collective conscience of the state. The state is regarded as the supreme conscience of society and is empowered to force universal compliance. By outsourcing conscience to a collective state conscience, several objectives are served. The first is to alleviate the torment caused by those who condemn sin. Seeking to quash condemnation of sin, evildoers invent a non-existing right not to be offended and create an environment of cancel culture. The culture becomes law, and the state is given authority to punish those who obey their conscience when it conflicts with the law. For those who seek to escape personal responsibility and obligations to humanity, outsourcing their conscience to a God state acts in place of the conscience. The care of the poor and the needy and other victims of misfortune is passed on to the state. They need not be their brother's keeper. That is the job of the God state. The end result of appointing others to serve as a conscience has a number of destructive ramifications. To begin with, it results in insufficient and inferior help to those in need. Those who are appointed almost always are too far alienated from the problems and the people involved to help or even care much about them. When the state takes charge of caring, it becomes more about how the state may benefit by becoming involved. Even if the state tries to solve the problems of society, the government finds it constantly fails. The administration then accepts failure as normal and becomes hardened and detached. As for those who outsource their conscience, their hearts also become hardened. It is a human need of the soul to be able both to give and to receive out of the goodness of the heart, especially when one sees need. Love dies in a society where the state becomes the heart and soul of the people. The state operates pragmatically outside of personal relationships and local connections. A state welfare system operates methodically like a machine, calculating things according to the government's interest, weighing in political benefits and monetary gains and losses. Whereas at one time it was the churches, the community, and the individuals with direct local connections who provided for those with need, it is now the outsourcing of the conscience through the voting booth that is becoming the norm. However, the fabricated state conscience created by this is a godless one, destroying the bonds of humanity within the community. Presently, a great many corporate giants, along with many of the rich and famous, proclaim they would be happy for the government to raise taxes on everyone else to save the world. They support this in order to feel good about themselves and to engage in public virtue signaling. A number of these entities are self-styled philanthropists who have charities operating on donations from others. Almost all of these wealthy people control or influence these charities. The charities funnel funds into social engineering programs directed at empowering global socialism. They promote their personal agendas. Their charity is really about themselves. Socialism is the disease of our age. Call it woke, progressive, a great reset, or whatever you will. It is not merely coming, it is here now. Only the extent to which it prevails is left to be seen, but it is global. More and more we are witnessing a global collective mindset being forced upon the world. Individual rights are being stripped away, and every protection from abuse of power is being removed. As the state becomes the conscience of society, those who hold a different moral code are opposed and coerced to conform. This is evidenced by the persecution of Christians who are being brought before courts. They are being fined and stripped of their livelihoods because they would rather face that than having to violate their conscience. Indeed, it is happening right now. Every day there is an attempt by authorities to force the conscience of the state upon those who do not willingly reject their own. On the other hand, many have grown cold and have willingly embraced the outsourcing of their souls to the state. As this takes place, both those in power above and those beneath who join them become an animal of instinct, a beast, the body of Satan. It is the great tragedy of our time. The individual soul is dying, and a cold collective state soul is emerging. Jesus prophesied that in the last days iniquity would abound and the love of many would wax cold. Indeed, just as Jesus prophesied, it has come to pass. As the state machine replaces the conscience of individuals to become the compassion of the people, the state will become more machine than human. Human beings, on the other hand, become the cheap, disposable merchandise of mass production, being judged by quality control as they come off the line. Should they long survive, later on in life as they become tired and old, they will be tossed into the recycle bin, being no longer deemed useful to society. How much is it already the case?